Hello, I'm Robert Walker, a fact checker and science blogger, and helping people who are scared of various things. And this is for people who are scared of climate change and the various people saying it's going to be a catastrophe. And it's a good paper that came out on Nature, and it explained, I hadn't actually realised that the business as usual, you keep hearing business as usual, and all these projections that we're going to head up to 5 degrees C by 2100 if we were to continue with business as usual. And what is not explained is that actually the business as usual scenario that they originally did, it's called RCP 8.5, so just rather a bit of a mouthful. But this scenario was not really an expected future even then. It was a worst case, and it was a 10% probability, 1 in 10 chance that they thought that we would go that way. And it involved burning 5 times as much coal every year as they were burning back then. Coal burning going up and up and up. Coal is by far the most CO2 for the amount of energy that you get from it, of our various fossil fuels. There are more efficient ways of burning coal, and which have been improved since then, but it's talking about sort of your ordinary standard kind of coal. And so imagine that just zooming up and up and up, the CO2 emissions just going up hugely. And as you can see, our historical emissions, they're not heading up business as usual anyway. And if you look at so if that's the 4 degrees C path, and this takes you down to 2100, and for 3C, then you're still emitting CO2 right to the end of the century, even 2.5 degrees C you are. And so we're nowhere near that. So now let's check I've got the lines right. So I mean this is the IEA projections, so pledged policies, and that's what we are on. And it's actually, if you look at it projected from back there, it's actually below the 3 degrees path. Although if you look at our actual pledged policies projected forward, then they call it 3 degrees C. But as you can see, we're actually even well below the 2.5 degrees path if we were to follow this and then keep increasing on our pledges in a kind of fairly easy way. And so if you look at that, I mean really, we're on 3 degrees C path, but bearing in mind that we're going to increase our pledges, surely, and we already have, the EU is going to, for sure, to 1.5 degrees centigrade, that's 2020, and then 2025 we're bound to increase them again. So this is the projection that's 2020, and then by the time we get 2030, we're surely going to be further down than that. And this is, I think I saw even around 2000 and the 1.5 degree path. Of course there's a 1.5 degree path here, and that's the one that has to go to 0 sometime around there. There's a 2C path which goes to 0 about 2070. And then there's a 3 degree path which from our point never goes to 0 in this century. It goes somewhere up there. And that's what we're pretty much on. But if you think about it, I mean, I think it's very implausible that we remain on the 3 degree path. If you think about that a little bit more, what it means, then that would mean that we have our current policies as they are now, and everyone just rests on their laurels and say, oh, we're doing fine, and then as we go warmer and warmer, then we get to the 2 degrees C level, and then look around, we notice that nearly all the coals are now gone, and people just say, oh, we don't need to do anything about that, we're doing fine, and no need to increase our pledges. And then going through to 2050 and then 2060, and it's going up beyond that point. About 2040 or 50 maybe, the coals are nearly all gone, apart from a few in the Red Sea and a few left amongst the sponges and the seaweeds on the Great Barrier Reef. as it gradually changes, and then much of the rainforests suddenly becomes savanna, and lots and lots of wildfires in Australia, far worse than the ones that are at present, and the hurricanes a bit worse, a fair bit worse, and dust bowls forming in the Dust Bowl area of the United States, and we still have United States presidents saying no need to join the Paris Agreement, the world is fine, everything's fine, it's nothing to do with human beings, or if it is, then it's making the world a better place. And you can imagine that just going on and on and on like that. That's just not conceivable. It's just not conceivable that we do that, and that we just continue on the 3-degree path. So I personally don't think it's likely that we go far above 2 degrees C. I think well below 2 degrees C is of course the target, but we're already on 3 degrees C, but I think we're bound to go well below 3 degrees C, even in the worst case. Just bearing in mind that human beings we are bound to act more and more vigorously, and then also feeding into that, we have the climate change youngsters, the school strikers and so on, and by then they're senior politicians by then. They're prime ministers and such like, and presidents, that generation, and there's just no way that they just continue to the end of the century just saying we don't do anything. So I don't think 3 degrees C is feasible. 2 degrees C, going down to 0 by 2070. I mean, that could happen with people, as you get closer to 2 degrees C, and more people acting and saying, we've really got to do something. There's nearly all the coals are gone. We can save the rest if we just get down to 0, if we just reduce the carbon emissions. So you could imagine just kind of tapering off at 2 degrees C, if the projections are right about the coals. That'd be a big wake-up call for anyone who's been on the hedge by then. So, on the fence, sorry, not the hedge, on the fence by then. So anyway, the thing is, this is a new paper and it's from Nature, and that is a good thing. So Nature has had some kind of mixed ones. This is a Nature comment. So Nature comment, it's not like one of these peer-reviewed things. It's probably not even, I'm not sure if it's peer-reviewed. It's Eco Horsepower who's written some quite good things, and as lead author, and they're a lot more. They're able to present opinions. It doesn't have a huge number of sites, but it has it has a reasonable number for Nature comment, and it just is accurate. It's just good. And the Nature comments are a bit mixed sometimes, but this one's pretty good. And this graph comes from there. And so they are saying that we're using the wrong labels. And they said that, and I mean I didn't know. I hadn't actually looked very closely at the business as usual thing from my science blogging, and they were saying that many climate scientists haven't done that either, in the sense that they just accept it as an input to their models, and they don't really kind of think about what it actually means. That it means that you have 5 times the total CO2 from coal that we have today. And they say it should not be labelled, it should never have really been labelled business as usual. It was always highly unlikely. And now, I mean, it's just about impossible now. Now, 4 degrees C, then that of course would be that would be reversed. They say that should be called unlikely, because it's reversing some of our current policies. I think extremely unlikely, if you bear in mind the facts I was talking about the next generation coming along and people noticing more and more. And then given current policies, then this should be called likely. Range around 3 degrees C or so. 3 degrees C down to 2.5 degrees C is what they think should be called likely. And then modest mitigation is 2.5 degrees C, And so one of the points they make in this paper is that if you present business as usual as being this 5 degrees C thing, then the policymakers will look at that and think, we've got to drop it all the way down from 5 degrees C down to 1.5 degrees C. How on earth are we going to do that? And so they say it's very discouraging, and they don't think that's a good idea. Oh, I had lots of quotes. I forgot the quotes there. Oh yes, further down the page. So the need to limit, and they say there's plenty of reasons, urgent reasons, to stay within 1.5 degrees C. And they say the need to limit to 1.5 degrees C is made clear in IPCC's 2018 special report does not depend on having a 5 degrees C counterpoint. We don't need to say, if you don't do that, then everything's going to go absolutely horrible and worse, and worse than you can imagine. And the climate activists, and especially Extinction Rebellion, they go even further. They talk about human extinction and collapse of civilization, but it's not possible even in that scenario. Nowhere near. Neither of those. You could still feed everyone through to 2100, even on that scenario. Produce enough food, but a sadly depleted world. And lots of natural disasters and bushfires, but you still have enough food for everyone, you can still grow it. It doesn't turn into a desert. Large areas of semi-arid land become desert if you don't mitigate, and you can mitigate to make a big difference, even with 5 degrees C, but we're not headed for that. And they also say we cannot settle for 3 degrees C. So they are not saying at all, oh, everything is fine, this is likely and we're okay. They say we cannot settle for 3 degrees C. Far too much goes wrong at that temperature. But they also say, nor should we dismiss progress. And I was very pleased to see them say that. It is so rare for anyone to say that, which is to say, actually draw attention to the progress we've made already. We have brought it down from, now this is from 4 degrees C down to 3 degrees C, from that all the way down to that, as our projection, as our likely projection. And that really, and this is our pledge policies, and that really is a big, big thing to have done, and even use more than that. So we've dropped it 1 degree, full degree. We've got to drop it another 1.5 degrees, and that basically is our situation. But we have an awful lot going for us, especially the huge drop in the price of renewables. Anyway, so and so what else do they say? They say that this doesn't make action on climate change less urgent. That's my summary of them. And they say, yes, this is another thing I thought. A narrative of progress and opportunity can make the Paris target seem feasible rather than seemingly impossible. And I think that it's so good to see that people beginning to say that, because when you hear the talks to the climate change things, they seem to have a doctrine, the activists have a doctrine of perfection, and anything less than perfection is seen as absolute total failure. And that is the sort of impression you get. And then on the other side of the debate, you have people like Trump who say we have clean air and we have clean water in America and everything is great, and America is great and we don't need to do anything. And then between those, there's hardly anything in between. And then you have the climate activists in the UK, and they say we've got to reach carbon zero by 2025 based on completely junk science. There's no science behind their claim that we have to reach carbon zero in 5 years, and 5 years from now we certainly will not reach carbon zero. It's almost inconceivable that that would happen. And then they go around telling children in schools that we have to reach carbon zero by 2025. If we don't do that, everyone's going to die. It's absolute utter nuts. There's no truth to that at all. It's a sociology professor with very nutty ideas who fancies himself as a climate scientist and says the IPCC are all wrong. The IPCC are not doing research themselves. They summarise all the research in the literature, and the full range of views according to how well established, how not to do with if it be conservative or anything like that. It's to do with whether the research they summarise is done properly according to the scientific method and accurately, and whether it is presented with good evidence. It's nothing at all to do with the opinions or the projections from that science, or the political views of the scientists, or what country they come from, or anything like that. It is peer review is due to looking at the way the science is done. It's policy and results neutral. And then the IPCC, they then look at all those papers, and it's a very high level systematic review, which we know how to do. It's like the way you do it in medicine. And even though you've got the drug companies, and you've got these tobacco companies, and you've got lots of pressures and political pressures, and that yet they have well set out methods for doing a proper systematic review of the literature, which is not biased by all those kind of things that are kind of pull the conclusion in one way or another. And so it's the same with the IPCC. That is what they do. They do the scientific method. They do scientific systematic overview, which we know how to do. We know the methods to do it. It's all a total system that's been worked up in great detail, originally in the medical arena, and very successful and accurate. And that is what the IPCC do. So if there is something that is sensible, well, not the conclusion, but sensibly done, properly done, following the scientific method, not fudging the data, not misquoting previous people, citing good sources, and doing the data reduction properly, doing statistics properly and accurately, and taking account of the objections that previous researchers have made to them, and not just ignoring them. That's one of the big things, things that big, what's the word? Anyway, that's a big red flag. No, what's the word? I get a bit fuzzy sometimes, but that's a big thing that says this is junk science. If they've been criticised and there are lots of objections to what they wrote, and then they don't answer those objections, so that's another thing that will be done in peer review. Look at the paper, look at their critics, and have they answered the criticisms that the other papers have said of their methods and their research. So they don't have to agree with them. They can have a totally different view, but if there is a very significant thing, correct criticism of them, then it has to be mentioned, and and they have to say what their answer is. And other people don't need to agree with them, and they're often very varying views on the matter. So that is the sort of thing the IPCC would do. They would check that everyone is doing science properly, and then they summarise what they say, and that's all they do. So anyway, so the science can let you go in the middle. It is policy neutral, and I hope this paper is just my sort of actually just presenting what the actual science says. That's basically what it's doing, and explaining what this all means carefully and clearly. And I hope this can help with the polarisation we have between the activists and the policymakers. And what the activists, they say, we've got to get to carbon zero by 2025 for no reason at all, or for absolutely absurd reasons that don't make climate science sense. And it'd be wonderful if we could go to carbon zero by 2025, but you've got to look at what that involves. Changing all our cars into electric vehicles by 2025, when the natural lifetime of your cars is 15 years. Loads of cars around the world would have to be scrapped and replaced by electric vehicles, and electric power stations all over the country, all over the world, and to power up all these cars. A massive industry, sort of ramped up very, very quickly before you know how to do it. It's never been tested on a smaller scale. No country, no small country, not even a small country, has has yet got completely electric transport. And there have been lots of problems with the early electric vehicles, things to do with how you recycle them, the amount of energy it takes to make your electric vehicle. And before you do all that, you have to have 100% renewables everywhere, because there's no point in running electric vehicles on electricity from fossil fuels. That's less efficient than putting the fossil fuels directly into a petrol-driven car. It's not especially coal. You're going around running electric cars on electricity from coal. You'd be better off just running them on gasoline. So, first of all, before you have the electric vehicles, you've got to have the renewables and or nuclear power, both, and then get 100% renewables, then more than 100% of your electricity through renewables. Then it's making sense to have your electric vehicles, and to do all of that in 5 years. So, these climate activists say these very extreme things one way, and then you get people saying things that are just wrong. And even I was very surprised to hear David Attenborough talk about saying that we risk, saying about how a lot of our oxygen is made. I have to talk about this separately. Why do these public figures say these things without checking them? Yeah. Or if he did check, or if he knew that, why did he say it when it's false? So you just be careful with your science. This is really, what you're saying really is true. And that, I think, is the way to bridge the gap between the two. And really base it properly on science. Not just saying something and say, and sort of give the impression it's science when it isn't. So, yes, I think I might do a separate video about this oxygen thing, because so many people think we risk running out of oxygen. We don't. There's enough oxygen in our atmosphere to last us for thousands of years, even if all the vegetation was to stop, magically continue doing photosynthesis, but stop producing oxygen. It doesn't even make chemical sense, but suppose that was possible. Then there's still plenty of oxygen for all the animals in the world for thousands and thousands of years. That's how vast our atmosphere is. So if anyone goes and tells you that we risk running out of oxygen from anything we do, to do with climate change or any fossil fuels or anything, it's just not true. And it just means they haven't checked their facts. Anyway, so, and then, now this paper, I better stop soon, I'm a bit rambling on. Now, I hope you're enjoying this, some of these things. So the yes, the IPCC actually did their own worst case. So this is not, they're saying that this is the 3 degrees C is likely with current policies, and there's nothing controversial about that. It's not very often said, that's all. And they're saying we should start saying this. They're not saying something new and radical by saying that. Everyone's doing that. But they've gone around sort of telling the public that this, as if it was a real problem, when it isn't. Everybody knows that we're headed for around 3 degrees C. There are some, and certainly, I mean, there is a little bit about the climate sensitivity and whether it could be more than that, but I think most people think there's something a bit funny about those models. And if there is something genuine, then it's likely only happens towards the end, when you get to about 2100. So there's certainly nothing happening. They're talking about low-level clouds kind of disappearing a little bit, and so getting warmer than we're expecting, but nothing like that is happening yet. So, no, it's a little bit, I'm not sure whether they don't even know whether it's going to happen, because these models are at a very early stage of testing at the moment. And then it's got to be validated against observations in many ways. So anyway, what was I saying then? So, yes, so they call this likely, the 3 degrees path, but the IPCC actually went a bit further than that, and they called this the worst case, the 3 degrees path. IPCC say 3 degrees apart here is the worst case. An example worst case. So what was their reasoning? So it was much what I just said just now. It's just not credible. That as we go all the way up to 3 to 5 degrees C, or 4 degrees C, or so, if we all the way up to say 4 degrees C, which is reversing some of the unlikely thing, it's not credible as we go all the way up to that we don't do anything about it. So their worst case was that the Paris Agreement completely disintegrates, and by the time we get 2020, there isn't any agreement anymore, and everyone has withdrawn from it. That's their worst case. And that obviously hasn't happened. And I know there was some, sort of, in the last COP25, they tried to agree something about carbon trading. And it's really just a detail, because everything is going on anyway. All these countries are doing their pledges. They want to do something about the carbon trading, which that's a problem of double accounting. The way Brazil wants to do it could lead to Brazil being double counted. And this is just to do with the notional ways of how they present their policies to other people. But it's quite important all the same. So they need to sort this sort of thing out. But it's a minor detail compared with everything that's already going on. And we could certainly keep going with the Paris Agreement, even if that isn't sorted out in COP26, and they're not going to stop it because of that. So they just postpone it to the next one, COP27. But hopefully we do sort it out. But anyway, so their own example, worst case scenario, is not, they just didn't think it's plausible to go up to 4 degrees C. So they work on, in their future it falls apart by 2020, which didn't happen. And then, although there are many initiatives locally and nationally, they're not enough together, they're not coordinated anymore. So the UK and the EU keep doing 1.5 degrees C, but there's no Paris Agreement. And then the EU would look around and say, nobody else is doing this, and all our industry is being uncompetitive, and we've got to start doing something about this. And in that future, without the Paris Agreement, then, and there's little work on climate resilience, people not doing the flood defences, and just saying nothing's going to happen. And it's not until 2030s, late 2030s, at that point, everybody will start noticing and saying, well look, these cities are being flooded, and we've got to do something to stop this. And look, the corals are going extinct. So it's very much what I was saying just then. And it's not credible that sometime in the 2030s, and the wildfires much worse than they are today, and it's just not credible that we go through all that and nobody does anything. So so their worst case was the Paris Agreement falls way apart. We go way above our policies and way up here. I mean, we're way up here with our carbon emissions. But then so the Paris Agreement goes wrong there. We go way up here in our carbon emissions, and then people just start noticing here everything going wrong, and they say, oh, and then they start doing a very steep pledge, and they just manage to get it into 3C, which will be below that at the end of the century. That is their worst case. And so a lot of action, but it's late and uncoordinated. Now, I don't see that happening on our scenario. So it obviously didn't fall past 2020, and our pledge policies. And if you look around the world, then many countries are overachieving. The EU is overachieving. UK, we're already pledging to 2050 on their Paris pledges. There are now 114 countries that are going to pledge to increase their commitment, and I can't remember the number. I've forgotten the number, but there's an awful lot of them are going up to 1.5 as well. COP25. So here we go, 14th of January. Yes. So 114, let's just pick up this news. I've got to add this to my carbon pledges anyway. So I'm not sure if this is the best source for it, but 114 nations will be boosting ambition, and that's a doubling of the number that there were before. 120 extra nations have said they've signed off on plans to get down to carbon zero by 2050. That was not the best source on that, but I've read that elsewhere. So I'd have to hunt down and find a better source to actually find it. That seems a likely one. I must include 140. Anyway, I'll check that up and I'll put a link to the description. I'm not going to waste time wandering around. I can find that easily enough. Anyway, so that's 120 countries in the world that are planning to submit pledges for zero emissions by 2050 in COP26. I don't see how you cannot call that a success. It doesn't mean that we've got the entire world, and it's a big difference if China comes in. China's not likely to pledge to 1.5, but it might pledge to 3C. So China is at the moment, it's not even 3 degrees C compatible. It might even pledge to 2 degrees C. Last year, then, China and France did a joint statement in which they both said they're going to pledge to reach carbon zero sometime this century. Of course, France is now pledging 2050, and the EU is going to have a summit with China sometime this summer, and then they hope to persuade China to make a similar pledge before COP26 to reach carbon zero sometime this century. If they did that, then they would be better than 2.5 degrees C compatible. It's not impossible that China do that. And independently, then, for whatever they do, they're going towards renewables very quickly. I mean, they're expected to peak the carbon dioxide emissions in the early 2020s rather than the late, even with all the things that are going wrong with the trade deal and everything. And they have had this temporary trade deal thing, got a bit of setback with the coronavirus on their trade, but they're hopefully by COP26 they're thinking about this stuff again, and they're ready to do an ambitious pledge. If so, then we can be well on the way to, we could easily be 2.5 C compatible as a result of the 2020 pledges if China comes on board, I would have thought. If China came in with a deep pledge like that of 2 degrees C compatible, it's not impossible we go all the way down there from our 3 degrees down half a degree. But we'll have to see what happens. It's looking promising. I mean, 120 countries that say they're going to go carbon zero, and that's a big step up. Suddenly people are coming up and stepping up to the plate. I think we can already call it a success, because the main thing was that every 5 years they meet and increase the pledges. So the main thing that was needed for COP26 to be a success is not to target 1.5 degrees C. That's not really credible. But to, not the whole world. It's impossible really without the United States. But I would think, unless very steep pledges by everyone else. And even then, so I can't see that target reaching 1.5, but to be well below 3 degrees C, and that shows you've increased the pledges from 2015 to 2020, and this sets the precedence so that we can now expect to increase again in 2025 and then again in 2030, and that is the way to get to 1.5 degrees C, because that was built into the Paris Agreement. The idea is that every 5 years, you've built up the technology, for instance. So China's built up an entire new renewables technology that's much lower cost than it was before it started. The whole world has. Renewables have dropped by fourfold in 8 years for solar power. It's a quarter of the price. I expect it to halve again eventually. And it's already competitive with the cheapest fossil fuels. If it halves again, then it'll be highly competitive and be very difficult to keep burning fossil fuels Because your fossil fuel power stations, an awful lot of the cost is in the fuel. And so once you start getting renewables that have been built, and then an awful lot cost renewables when you build them, and then if the power is being produced at half the price of the fossil fuel based power stations, then it just undercut them and they'll stop operating. So it's certainly feasible, especially if we get another halving of solar power at the station, which is possible, then we could get quite a big transition just from the cost saving of solar power. So things really looking much better than people make them out to be. There's no thought of doom and gloom. And I'm not being falsely optimistic. I'm just giving you a hard-headed look at the situation. I'm showing you the positive side of it. The positive things that are often not mentioned. Positive things going on. I'm not mentioning, you know all the negative things that they keep bringing up. Very few people actually know these positive things because it's very rarely in the news. It's just a little detail. And if it's in the news, hardly anyone shares it. Because we've got such polarisation between the climate activists who only share if it's said that we're going to go to carbon zero in 5 years, or as all the doom and gloom. And then we've got the people who deny everything, and they're not going to share this either. So not many people share the kind of real news of the science. They're always exaggerating one way or another. So we've got to turn that around, I think. I'm trying to help with my blog posts. So, so there's my how well the country's doing with their Paris pledges. I've talked about this in previous videos. Don't need to anymore. This is getting rather long. So, so I hope you enjoyed this. And again, I hope to make things a bit more positive. And I'm finally going to have a video next about some remarkable things that we could do. That there's the restoration, the project for climate restoration. Obviously, I mean, so this, if you thought this is ambitious, but the project for climate restoration is far more ambitious than this. So they're saying, forget about 1.5, well, not really forget, make sure you do aim for 1.5 degrees C. They're saying we can get back to 1 degree C by 2050. So it's climate restoration. In fact, no, yes, is it 1 degree C, or I'll look it up when I look it up. I think they want something about going back to. They are climate restoration people. They actually say, I'll just bring up the article I'm going to talk about. They actually talk about reaching. Let's just pick it up, and then this is for next time. It. That's all this. So it's further down, before the doomsday clock. I thought it was after. There too, climate restoration, pre-industrial, yes. So the 3 ways that we could actually get back to pre-industrial by 2050. Now, I get people saying, you shouldn't show, almost get people saying you shouldn't show this to people, because if you do, then they're not going to want to, they're going to say, well, it doesn't matter what we do, because we could go back, we can reverse it. That's not what I'm saying at all. We've got to stay well within 2 degrees C if we want to save the coals. But you get so many people going the other way and saying, we're headed for doom and gloom. And this is just to show the wide range of possibility that of these 3 ways. There's several ways, but these 3 are the main ones. These that could actually be paid for themselves. And they are permanent, greater than 100 years, and they could scale to more than 25 gigatons carbon dioxide per year, which if we go down to carbon zero, and then we do all that, then we can go back to pre-industrial if we so want to do. I'm not sure we even want to do that. So I'm going to talk about that in a separate video, and that's what comes next. But for now, this is the just I'll end with the diagram. It doesn't seem to go up into a space of its own. So, do subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more videos like this. And remember about our Doomsday Debunk group on Facebook, where you can go there if you're scared of various things. Go there as a fact checker, and like myself, and help people who are scared, and to help. And also, if you're good at reassuring panicking people, then you can go there and just talk to people who are panicking and just help them to calm down, and give them tips about anxiety. And if anyone listening to this is a psychiatrist and psychologist, then you may be able to help our members too. I mean, just help them with helping some of them having problems finding a psychologist, and give them tips about what to do, and just I'm not talking about diagnosing people over the internet or anything like that, but just in basic ways helping our members. Most of them do have therapists, of the ones who are really panicking, and we are there to help them with fact checking. Their therapists often say, go and fact check this, are you sure it's right? And then we are the ones to help them do that, because if you're panicking over something that's not actually true, then you don't want to be the first thing to do is to fact check it. But it's extremely difficult to fact check this stuff until you have a good idea as to how to find the reliable sources and what they are. So anyway, maybe see you there, and also I hope you enjoy this endeavour.